to come out the gate and answer your question directly, do you need to know coding or have experience with it to get into cybersecurity? Absolutely not. It just depends on kind of what interests you. If you're interested in sort of that hacker mindset or defending against all of the hacks that come in from, whether it be local or nation state attacks, and you want to kind of get into that sort of ecosystem, for sure, coding's always going to help. You don't need to know it to get involved, but you're going to get to that point where maybe knowing how to code or knowing how to read code is going to help you tremendously.
Welcome to the Philip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Philip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Philip Wylie Show. Today I'm joined by Marshall Livingston. Marshall was another recommendation from Michael Kim. So if anyone's familiar with the episodes and my podcast, the Philip Wylie Show, and also Simply Offensive, Michael's made some great recommendations on guests as well as been a guest on those podcasts. And so another interesting kind of connection here. Marshall and I were already connected prior to Michael making the recommendation. Sometimes it's like I share with a lot of other guests. When you're connected, a lot of people in the community and stuff, you think, I need to interview this person, and you forget about it, and you finally get reminded. I've got friends that when I launched the Philip Wylie Show back in April of 2023, there were people that I just got around to interviewing this year. So thanks to Michael for making the recommendation, and thanks to you for joining today.
Oh, no, I really appreciate it. It's kind of one of those situations where it's like, oh, I know this guy. We've even chatted a few times here or there in passing, but getting an actual meaty conversation going, it's due time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see more conversations coming based on our pre-recording conversations. So always have my guests share their hacker origin stories. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your origin story, kind of how you got started up until what you're doing today.
Yeah, no, that's a great, it's a story that I've shared a few times, and I'm happy to share it here because I think it's a fun story. Actually, Hack the Box, I wrote a blog post about this as well, which I'll send you if it's of interest, to share out. But essentially my origin story was probably very similar to many. This was before obviously AI had really taken over the scene. It was over a decade ago. And it was when we were trying to just Google everything to understand anything. And I was in the restaurant industry, and I pivoted out into the hardware repair business. I had always a big fascination with video games. Goodness, I'm dating myself here, but about like 15 years ago was the big interest, right? And so like kind of getting into computers was always just a thing. And even as a kid, like tinkering and taking things apart. I grew up in a big farm, so I had to DIY everything. It was a big farm in New York. We had like, several hundred acres, tons of like horses, and goodness, like too many cats to count, barn cats and things like that. So DIY process was just part of it. So I kind of grew up tinkering on that kind of thing. And my hacker story kind of really started when I was writing scripts for the business that I started, which was ML Techie at the time. And it was just a hardware repair and consulting business. And I was writing scripts that were helping me automate the cleanup process or defragmentation process of things. And so as every engineer does at some point in their stage or another, I broke my script that I was writing and ended up Googling the error. And a few links down, I ended up seeing this, this thing called Hack the Box. And I was kind of fascinated. I was like, what is this? I was looking for a Stack Overflow link, but instead I was like, getting a Hack the Box link. So I clicked on that, and I was introduced to this ecosystem where you had to hack yourself or hack into this website to become a member. And at that point, I was just totally hooked. I was just enthralled. So spent a lot more time than I'd like to admit trying to get into that. And ended up taking me a couple of days, and finally, found the invitation function, generated myself an invite code, and was now a member of Hack the Box, which I thought was just the coolest concept ever. And at that stage, I was definitely, it was early on for Hack the Box. This was like in probably the mid 2016, late 2016 era. And so I was, they had not really broken into the US market yet. And so I was looking for like-minded individuals to kind of jump into this cybersecurity train with me. And, so I ended up forming as many connections as I could. And then we would do kind of like hack the box content or offensive security content or things like this. And we do capture the flag events, et cetera. But that's really my origin story is, I was writing some code, broke my code, and then Googled around trying to figure out how to fix it and stumbled onto something awesome. That was my, and then my career was just that for the next 9, 10 years. That's cybersecurity has been my focus.
Yes, you got a pretty interesting backstory too, just seeing from the hardware repair up until
Mm.
doing some web development. One of the things people are asking, do you need to know how to code to get into cybersecurity? And what are your recommendations on coding? I mean, as far as breaking in, do you think it's a requirement? If it's not a
That's a
requirement, do you think it can enhance someone's career?
Yeah, great question. And to be honest, I've been asked this quite a bit. Michael Kim was one of the people that asked me this a few years ago, actually. And to break into cybersecurity, like cybersecurity is this massive umbrella. And I feel like that's what people that are coming into it don't really see is that it's a whole ecosystem. There's so much to do in cybersecurity. For instance, you could go into cybersecurity and be more so on the marketing side of things, which really has zero things to do with coding, but you're still kind of pushing a cybersecurity narrative or a training platform or, whatever it may be. So there's so many avenues in cyber or GRC, for instance, governance and compliance. There's very little coding on that, but much more on policies and cybersecurity law and things of that nature. So to come out the gate and answer your question directly, do you need to know coding or have experience with it to get into cybersecurity? Absolutely not. It just depends on kind of what interests you. If you're interested in sort of that hacker mindset or defending against all of the hacks that come in from, whether it be local or nation state attacks, and you want to kind of get into that sort of ecosystem, for sure, coding's always going to help. You don't need to know it to get involved, but you're going to get to that point where maybe knowing how to code or knowing how to read code is going to help you tremendously. But again, it really just depends on which vertical you want to enter.
Yeah, kind of drilling down on that comments about whether it helps people later on in their career. It's pretty interesting to see people that do know some coding, how they advance their career, creating tools and
Oh, yeah.
just be able to go further. But it seems like, I don't know, get your thoughts on this, but it seems like the way tools have evolved from a pen testing standpoint and security standpoint in general, these different tools have
Absolutely.
made it so easy that you don't have to code. And I think it's made it too easy for people to avoid learning how to code.
Honestly, you bring up a really great point again, which is especially with like artificial intelligence, small language models, et cetera, or even the LLMs out there that are doing very decent generalized coding, right? I think, you know, the past roughly year and a half, I've been trying to study up on like artificial neural networks, how these large language models are actually, processing and things and the different type of algorithms and equations that they use to process, neural networks, et cetera, things of this nature. And to your point, like, do you need to know how to code to, moving into the industry, moving forward because automated tools like AI could help with this. And yeah, yes, it does help a lot. But again, I think that's a big gap, right? Is understanding what your tool is doing is just as important, right? If not more important. For instance, we have tools out there in the industry that I've been using for several years, like Burp Suite, which I'm sure you've used Burp Suite. Many of your subscribers and viewers, I'm sure, understand or know the tool Burp Suite, right? But it's just a tool. If you don't understand how the web application framework works or how networking actually works or the difference between a post and a GET request or the different vulnerabilities that are tied to post and GET requests, et cetera, the tool's not going to help very much, right? Or the tool will only take you so far. I kind of look at it the same with coding, right? You can have AI build you a program, but man, is it going to pass a security audit? You really won't know unless you kind of understand how functions are built, right? Or if you see what I'm saying? So like understanding how to code definitely going to give you an edge versus someone that doesn't, even moving forward in the artificial intelligence space. And I say that with as of right now, because AI is obviously in its infancy stage. A year or 2 years from now, could be having a very different conversation.
So speaking of AI, so if you said you've been learning, so is this something that you're putting a major focus on to understand to help you with your day to day?
Yeah, yes to that, but also, I think the it's more it's the thing about AI that's fascinating to me is more so the direction that it's actually taking, right? And how the consumer base is consuming it, right? I think it's actually very similar to how social media has been progressing over the past 5 to 6 years, maybe a little bit longer, but it's been very, very much more so tailorized and customized to fit your interests, if that makes sense, right? So for instance, if you're going through a social media feed based off the likes that you do or the things that you watch for a certain amount of time, that sort of trains the data set that's behind the scenes, and then it'll pump more content to you that are that's like that, or things that it may think that you like based off of the the things that you've actually shared that you like. I think artificial intelligence is moving in the same direction, right? Right now we have these large language models, but at the same that are more so generic, but at the same time they're kind of getting fine tuned. The more that you consume and interact with it, it's getting more tailored to Philip Wylie and how he communicates with Claude or ChatGPT, et cetera. It's going to communicate with you and engage with you and maybe program, because obviously I know you're a programmer too. It'll program differently with you than it would with me. And that's fascinating, right? I think that's gonna that's what I think is really what's been driving my interest in the artificial intelligence space is like you have these massive large language models, but they're very personalized. Like the use cases are very personalized per individual, and that's gonna shift how things are done. And I think how coding's done, et cetera, all that type of stuff as we move forward. But
So,
less so on a personal day to day for me, but more so from an R&D perspective and how it's going to shape the market moving.
so with you being kind of an investor and entrepreneur, do you see yourself leveraging AI to help you build businesses or come up with different opportunities to make money?
Yeah, yes, definitely. It's just it has to be, from what I've noticed, it has to be done in a very very unique way, because if you, for as I'm sure everyone's done here, and I think even South Park has made I'm not sure if South Park, they've even made episodes about this, and they're spot on, right? They're so funny about it, but it's so true with the way that you engage and interact with these artificial intelligence platforms. It can steer you or direct you based off the response that it's expecting you to know, right? And that's where it can get dangerous, right? So you utilizing it more as a tool instead of it being like, hey, I had this cool idea, what do you think? It's most likely going to agree with you that it is a cool idea, and it's going to build off of that. And that could lead you to, which we're seeing a lot in the small business space right now. Tons of investors have invested millions and millions of dollars into these, AI wrappers, if you will, right? That just take like a large language model, make some modifications, do some deep learning, some fine tuning, et cetera, and then push it to market. And now these investors are like, there's not even really a market space for this. What did we invest in? And now they're starting to ask. I think that's the exact issue that's wrong with AI, or how AI is being consumed right now is, you have to be very careful on how we use it to build business, or to build revenue streams, et cetera. Again, to answer your question directly, how I use it is much more of a market analysis tool, right? Like what trends are happening, um, what in different geographical regions, what trends are happening in India, what's happening in Southeast Asia, what's happening over in Eastern Europe, what's happening in the US, right? Political movements are obviously a big impact on that too, because that essentially will create the data set or the framework to where you can then operate within those bounds. Once you start having that dialogue and conversation with AI, you can start to, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like the AI, now, the whatever model you're using now kind of has those parameters, especially if it has the memory and the thinking capabilities like Claude or like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, et cetera.
Yeah, think it's really interesting because one of the things that, I've heard someone a while back kind of simplify uh, AI, and really just they kind of summed it up as AI is kind of way that we can leverage and make actionable results from kind of got to trying to figure out trying to remember what I was going to say. Yeah, so it's kind of a way to get actionable results from data analytics, being able to
Yeah.
use data analytics. Because back years ago when I went to work for AT&T, they always had us doing some sort of training around some of these up and coming technologies. Because back in 2014 when I started there, stuff like they were trying to get people trained on different areas, even whether you worked in technology or not, getting trained on data analytics. And you just saw some of these things, like a chip manufacturer or a PCB board manufacturer were building these boards, and they realized that they kept having these failures in the boards. And what it boiled down to was a certain time of the year, the sun was beaming through and affecting these boards and causing them to warp. And so they were able to take this data and use it to solve the problem. Whereas you figure the old way of doing things is just, they may have never figured out what the root cause was.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. I think that's really insightful. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I think it was Ira Winkler that mentioned about that AI is kind of data analytics. So that is interesting to look at the connection there, and I think it kind of gives people some ideas when they're leveraging it. Some of the things I've been looking at and watching lately is I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on automation with AI and different businesses, and it's kind of cool because a lot of us have heard of vibe coding, using it to create
Of course.
code and stuff. But one of the cool things I've kind of picked up on, I don't know, I guess maybe a couple months ago, was vibe marketing, that people are using, AI to do their marketing when, some company may be limited budget wise, may not be able to hire a full marketing team, but they're able to go in and use something like AI to generate marketing materials.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's super true. But even, going back to the vibe coding, which I'm sure translates to the vibe marketing element of things, but the vibe coding aspect, have you personally had experience where you've been like vibe coding and then been like, no, that's not right. I need you to do it this way, right? You've had to do some sort of like course correction when it comes to the code development, right? Have you
Not
experienced
so
that?
Not so much on vibe coding because I really don't know the coding side of things that well, but there's been other things that I've been creating content or writing something, and something they come up with I knew wasn't wrong. And that just kind of goes back to AI in general, that people have to keep in mind. You need to know enough about the subject, and you can't
Right.
just take everything at face value from AI because it can get things wrong. And so that's why you
Yeah.
just can't get someone that doesn't have a background in this, write a book about it or do some training course that has no clue about it, because they're not going to know whether it's right or wrong. You've got to be able to fact check AI.
100% agree. And I think like, you're bringing up a great point when, with this new technology that's hitting the market so fast and just scaling so quickly, some sort of like training on how AI works and also how it's, yeah, really the relationship, right? Like how you use it and how it kind of uses you at the same time. I'm a big believer that anything free in life, you're most likely the product, right? So every engagement that you have, like with a free LLM or with a free product of any kind, you're like, it's getting something from you as well, right? And so, that's where this whole sort of like tailorized experience, you can really isolate yourself and also make some really, really poor financial decisions if you don't know about the things that it's recommending you to do or, that you're engaging with, right? It's always good to do your due diligence on this type of stuff. So yeah, to your point, if you're going into, if you're gonna just launch a business and you're going to do some vibe marketing, I hope you have a marketing friend that you could at least you consult with, because I'm not saying it's going to be bad. It might be 90% great. Experience is a lot, and that's what I mean by AI is in its infancy phase, right? Where it's fascinating to see how like artificial neural networks work compared to organic neural networks, if you will. I'm thinking about it from like a linear regression algorithm. You have X amount of inputs, right? And then you have your processing time, and then you have an expected or predicted outcome, right? Which would be Y. And from an artificial neural network perspective, it's the exact same way. So humans and how we process things is the exact same way that something as simple as an ANN works. We just have some complications in that middle part, in the actual processing part. They are sometimes like, weights in our artificial intelligence, we call them weights, but in like organic life, we call that emotions or experience, right? For instance, if you and I were looking at the window right now and deciding if we wanted to go outside, there might be three things that are weighted, right? That would prevent us or allow us to go outside. Is it obnoxiously hot? I'm in Arizona, so you probably bet it is. Is it nice out, the weather, etc.? Is there a gas leak that's happening inside that might force us to go outside? See what I'm saying? There's like different parameters that happen on that decision. Whereas, or is like the sky gray? Is it going to rain? We don't know, but those type of things are what we're kind of perceiving, and those are inputs into our mind, and then we process them and then choose a decision. You might not care that it's 100 degrees out, so that decision right there, that weight, is maybe a 0 out of 5 to you on that weight scale. You don't care if it's hot out. For me though, it might be a 5 out of 0, right? It's very important. So you just by going off of those three things, you might decide to go outside based off of the weights that you set, and I might decide to stay inside. And artificial neural networks decide the exact same way. The thing that it's missing though is the experience and the emotions that we have. You have, X amount of years of experience. On myself, I'm 34, so I have 34 years of emotion and experience and, different things that help me process different ways, AI is going to catch up with it. And that's my bet, right? If I were to bet, that'd be my bet, is that AI is going to catch up with this probably in the next 2 years. I think that we'll see. I was just joking with Michael about this too. I was like, I bet you're going to see the way that we handle things from a cybersecurity and developer perspective. We're going to see that disappear faster than the 90s.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because just some of the risks that come with AI and the vibe coding, because I've been seeing recently in discussions that, with the vibe coding, that's going to be really good for bug bounty hunters. That people are doing bug bounties against that code, because a lot of cases someone's trying to build this software or something that doesn't have that development background. And then even you take someone that may understand have the background in development, but they don't understand, security, which is important. And people forget about those guardrails and forget to secure these things. And I see, and I know it's going to be an awesome force multiplier, AI, but at the same time too, it's going to interject a lot of security risks, based on, who's developing the code, developing these different platforms, their
Yeah.
background. Because one of the things you got to look at too is some startups. Someone could be a security product startup, but doesn't necessarily mean they're security professionals. They know how to code and develop stuff, because
A
I've
hundred
seen this.
percent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen this time after time where you have people that have, experience in software development, but don't have that security background.
Man, the amount of people that I've talked to that I've said that they're DevOps and have no security background is crazy. It's like too many to count, which is crazy to me because, if someone's calling themselves a full stack developer, you would assume they have some level of security, of some foundational security knowledge. No, it ends up being more not the case than the case. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because, like I said, I've been watching a lot of videos on YouTube about automation with AI and businesses and all this stuff. It's really kind of interesting, and to see how it's going to help things. But what are
Yeah.
your thoughts? Just kind of thinking of this. You've been around for a while, worked in IT and security for a while, and you've probably been places where there's been reductions in force, that they've laid people off,
Yeah.
and maybe they cut a little bit too deep. So what do you think? What's your thoughts on with AI automating things and automating these jobs? Do you think, there's always the risk, people worried about all the jobs going away, but do you see any cases where the cuts are too deep and they reduced people too quickly and AI wasn't able to perform the way they expected it to?
Well, yeah. I mean, there was I'm blanking on the name of the company right now. It'll come to me, I'm sure, but there was this company that pretty much cut their entire HR force, and it backfired massively because they were like, hey, we can do this. We can have artificial intelligence do this at a fraction of the cost. We already did a test pilot where we, essentially took 60% of HR out of this for the day and only had to interact with customers, right? But then that company ended up getting tanked and hit hard. The challenge with that, though, is that, looking at it from a market perspective or from an investor perspective, when a company has a massive hit or a massive tank like that, the recuperation time is there, right? Especially if it's a publicly traded company. I mean, look at Microsoft. Microsoft just had its second or third largest layoff in the past 20 years. And the first one was cutting staff so that way it could invest more in artificial intelligence, if I remember right. You might have to correct me here. I might be wrong, but I know one of the two was cutting back to supplement artificial intelligence. One was cutting back because they wanted to fund AI. The second one was supplementing the workforce with AI, right? And they seem to be getting they got a lot of flack for that in the beginning, which means that shares drop. But at the same time, like any market, everything always is going to go back up. So from an investor perspective, seeing things like that, looking at it on one hand, it's awful. From a second hand, now's the time to buy. Microsoft's obviously going to continue to do well and recuperate from this.
Yeah, and you can figure, like any
Take
great
advantage.
company that's done well, they're going to really go all in on AI, and so they're only going to use it to scale what they're doing. So it's
100%. And like your
yeah.
shirt, failure is not an option for these people, right?
Mhm.
For companies that are that big and have that many stakeholders, you can bet that failure is not an option for them. So when you do see that type of stuff happening, and especially if they're publicly traded, that's a good time for you personally to, or maybe ask AI if you think it's a good time to invest. So as a joke, don't do that.
Chat GPT, should I?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some one things that I thought would be good to discuss too is I've seen that you've worked as a sales engineer, and there's a lot of people that
Mm,
maybe they're tired of being practitioners. They're wanting to advance to the next level, but maybe they don't want to be a manager. So I see that you had some sales engineering experience. How's that for a role for someone to progress to as a career option?
I love it, to be honest. I think there was so many qualified candidates when I was running the sales engineer team over at Hack the Box that came through the pipeline from HR, and some of them, and obviously I had several friends that were in the sales or solutions space at other companies, and Hack the Box was a bit different, right? Especially me being like the first one there, because I was like the first sales engineer they brought into the company. It's a little bit different, and then I got tasked with building it out. Unfortunately, I was a bit biased. I was looking for people that really understood engineering, had a massive passion for it, understood security, because I felt like that really put the best foot forward for the company and for the training solution that we were providing at the time. However, from other companies that I had friends with, for instance, at Darktrace and other vendors like that, the breaking into this space and going into a sales engineer route was ideal for them. Very little or zero coding was needed for that type of thing. Passion was kind of like a massive multiplier or a big focus for hiring into that space, because it's really hard to teach passion, right? You can teach skills, you can kind of educate in that space, but you can't really teach someone to be passionate about what they're doing. And that's not the case for every role, right? For a sales engineer role, that's a big, you want to be excited on the call. You want to show like, hey, I'm excited about this product, client, right? Let me tell you about, my experience with it. Gets the excitement going. That's a big win. It's hard to teach that.
So how would someone go about, progressing into like a sales engineer position?
Yeah, again, it kind of depends on what company you're looking to go into in regards to a sales engineer role. But understanding the product's going to be one of the biggest things. If you're going to represent, if you're going to represent a company, you should know their products, you should know their offerings, and then get really excited and start making actual personal connections with the product, right? And that's what I mean. I think also probably that's probably what you mean when you say, sales engineer is probably a good route to get into if you're just starting out, because again, it's really just going to be that learning mindset. I want to learn as much as I can, and also a passion for this space. Those two things will, those will go a long way in sales engineer roles for sure.
So being an entrepreneur, if you wouldn't mind sharing what you're doing at your organization.
Sure. So, I mean, as you know, I did work at Hack the Box for quite a bit of time. Really enjoyed my time there. So many talented people that I got to work with: OXDF, IPSEC, Dimmy from INE. He was obviously rock star. Really enjoyed them. And after leaving, I had started a community that was called CryptSec, and it was just that. It was just a community. There was really nothing to it other than just a place where people could collaborate, get together, and do like-minded things, which would be doing hackathons or competitions, capture the flag events, etc. And after I left Hack the Box, I was talking to a few people from CryptSec, and we were talking about how there might still be some major gaps in the market when it comes to getting people excited about cybersecurity training, right? One of the biggest issues that I saw one of the biggest issues or challenges, I should say, that I saw over the past probably decade when it comes to cybersecurity training, from massive vendors that are in the space. I'll leave the names out just for that sake. I don't know if I should name them, but either way, the big players out there I've seen, they all have issues with retention and utilization rates, right? Where people, and I'm talking about the training space for that matter, right? People would come in, get really geeked and excited about doing the training, would do it, maybe get their certifications, go land their job. And then, man, who wants to do training after 12 hours of work? I don't. It just wasn't that fun, right, anymore. At first, it was awesome. It was fun and engaging. But then after that, it kind of just became work and, your 9 to 5, et cetera. And the excitement was lost. And so that was the problem that, we were all at CryptSec kind of thinking about, is like, can that problem be fixed? For people that are like myself, that are, or like yourself, 10 plus years in the industry, et cetera, that love it, but it's almost like, well, that love it, but, just don't have the necessarily the energy to do it anymore, or don't feel like the excitement's there. That's essentially what we decided, like, hey, let's actually test this out. We're going to come up with a product that sees, where we can see if there's some stickiness that surrounds it, and, see if there's any engagement around it. And we spent, countless hours and countless months developing and prototyping what we now have as, the CryptSec business. Essentially, our flagship product is CryptSec Chronicles, and it's just this really cool and engaging webtoon. It's kind of like a comic for those that aren't familiar with webtoons. It's kind of like a comic but online, right? And instead of flipping, you scroll. And it's a very engaging and immersive webtoon where you can watch the protagonist, Hai and Lenny, escape a facility, and meet this underground network and end up doing, they have to hack certain things and defend against certain things, and they're meeting people along the way. And the cool thing about it is that you have like engaging and interactive labs that are built right into the narrative. So for instance, if Kai and Lenny are about to hack something, the webtoon kind of pauses and it gives you the opportunity to be like, hey, do you want to hack this before they do? Or do you want to skip the lab? Can you eat your popcorn and scroll and watch what's happening? And I think that's what kind of keeps the stickiness and the engagement there. Anyway, we soft launched this to our community and we had like outstanding results, we had tons of great, both positive and constructive feedback. So the past like month and a half, we've been diligently putting in the feedback and making sure that's put into the platform. And we're going to be going live here in roughly about 10 weeks to 14 days and enter the space. And it's not just a webtoon that's focused on cybersecurity with labs. There's a whole new enterprise offering that we're going to be coming to market with here as well, which I'm really excited about, but I also can't share it quite yet. In like a month, I'll be able to share it. But as you can probably guess, it's AI focused.
Very cool. Yeah, look forward to checking it out. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share before we close it out?
Honestly, probably two things. One, gratitude for having me on board. I love doing this type of stuff. I know we've chatted in passing, so it's been great to actually chat with you. This has probably been one of the two best parts of doing this, was actually just chatting and conversing with you on stuff. Obviously the second is talking about the things that I love the most, which is the cybersecurity, industry and community. I'm a big fan of the community. But the second thing is that people that are wanting to get involved in cybersecurity, there's so many ways to do it, right? There's so many avenues, so many paths, and it can be daunting and feel very, way out there, but it's, one step in front of the other. Definitely network, getting involved with people or little small communities in your area help a ton, even if you're just joining a Discord group. Always, and I know you obviously have a Discord group. There's tons that are out there, but yeah, just those that are interested in cyber, keep going. And I'm really looking forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Look forward to some future conversations, but thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. And thanks to the listeners and viewers for checking us out. Make sure to subscribe and share with your friends and colleagues. And until next time, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Philip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Philip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Philip Wylie. Until next time.